So, talk about a rough week. Terrorists attacked the Kabul airport, killing 13 U.S. service members, 10 Marines, 2 Army soldiers, and 1 Navy corpsman. At least 160 Afghans were killed. The mayhem believed to be carried out by the Islamic group ISIS-K. The president tried to speak. Then Jen Psaki spoke. But somehow, I don't feel comforted. The president seemed defeated, lost between spasms of anger, then followed instructions to use a list of reporters given to him by whoever is really in charge. And Jen was just Jen, acting as though she was doing us a favor instead of her job. A job I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy. And besides, Perino already was press secretary. I go back to one question, though. How could everyone but the people in charge not see this coming? Maybe they were so busy distracting us that they got distracted while distracting us. Look, I'm an English major magazine editor turned class clown with an obsession over unicorns, and I could see this coming. Hell, the blind sheikh could see this coming after a conference call with Helen Keller. How could the people in charge not? Perhaps they did and just assumed carnage was the price we pay. Or maybe they just underestimated the risk, which boggles the mind. But again, I'm no expert, and yet how do I know better? Going forward, how can we have any confidence in our leaders? I wouldn't let them lead my paintball team. They make the Bay of Pigs look well thought out. I mean, who gives control of the airport perimeter to the Taliban as well as info on Americans? Could we have made it any easier for these medieval maggots? Oh, they will say, hey, we had no choice. But when has the military with the best weapons not had a choice? Instead, they led us to a place where there was no plan B. That's not leadership, that's resignation. And where are the resignations? Where are the firings? Maybe General Milley should put down the Robin DiAngelo and pick up the art of war. The upside, no more arguments over the meaning of the word stranded. We got a good visual of that at the podium yesterday. Biden is stranded, when really it's on the Democrats and the media. They only wanted Joe to win, but not to govern. And now he has to lead, and he can't. And don't even think of impeachment. Who could replace him? It's incredible how the woke embrace has destroyed the Democratic Party. You can't lead a country you think is racist while obsessing over pronouns and crackpots and Viking hats. So we ended up relying on the Taliban to keep us safe. That's like letting Charlie Manson babysit your kids. It reminds me of the Portland mayor who decided to make peace with Antifa while shafting the cops. We chose a regime that stones women to death for showing too much ankle at the expense of our troops. So why so many smart people making bad decisions? Well, maybe they're not that smart. Or maybe politics polluted their decision-making, driven by a still fresh loathing of Trump or our country itself. Having to get out by the end of August was a political choice, a self-induced deadline with the emphasis on dead. Not providing adequate security, another political choice. We couldn't have that many troops there, right? That's bad optics, they thought. Well, I got worse optics. A target with more sitting ducks than a decoy factory. Remember how under Trump it was a new crisis every day, every hour? CNN told us the walls were closing in, from the Steele dossier to the tax returns and every phony scandal in between. Those scandals were the good old days, high caloric, low nutrition, outraged junk food. Compare and contrast to now. Kabul's the real deal, real horror, real scandal, a blind consensus of sheer incompetence. So what do? Well, I'm no military general, but then again, does that matter? We must take responsibility for our people over there, get them all out, and obliterate those responsible for the bombings. And when we're done, we can decide what to do with Joe and the rest of that clown car. Think about this. After committing 20 years to one effort, we accepted the very opposite of that effort, quickly and without looking back. Like a husband who tells his wife and kids that he's going out for cigarettes, only to never return, leaving his loved ones vulnerable and unprotected. Someone should pay for that. But in the meantime, I don't want to hear about January 6th, climate change, mask mandates, or voter suppression, or whatever gassy, stupid political theater you're trying to peddle until you figure out how to get us out of this mess. But maybe asking them for help to get us out is as stupid as relying on the Taliban for the same thing.
There he is.
Welcome, tonight's guest. He's so white, he thinks oatmeal is ethnic food. Fox News contributor Tom Shalhoub. He's the second most popular Joe on the show, writer-comedian Joe DeVito. He's the third most popular Joe on the show, comedian Joe Mackey. And the first thing she does when she wakes up is thank the gardener for mowing around her. Fox News contributor, Cat Joe Timp. All right. So, Tom, how did you feel after listening to the Biden speech? Did you feel confident in his abilities to lead us?
Well, it was similar to most of his press conferences. He was completely out of it. That image that you showed, the most interesting thing about that image is really, it's not the image itself, it's that he couldn't answer the question.
Right.
So Joe does things when he can't answer the question. Sometimes he laughs. It's always inappropriate. Sometimes it's laughter. Sometimes he buries his head in his hands. Sometimes he says, come on, man. But the amazing thing, if you search this on Google and you look around, the mainstream media, the way they wrote about that image, which is, I mean, we're not going to forget that image. He was stuck. He didn't know what to do.
Yeah.
They said things like, Washington Post said, Biden shows frustration with reporter.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously an emotional moment for Biden. It wasn't an emotional moment. He couldn't answer the question. Mm-hmm. And the thing is, even if that's your interpretation, mm-hmm. that Biden was showing frustration with a reporter, that's not a story.
Right.
The story is he can't answer the question.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's
not
where
good,
he was.
not good. Joe, my defense, which I had there briefly in the monologue, is that it really isn't Joe's fault, mm-hmm. because it was the Democrats and the media who just thought that he was the best chance to win, despite his decline in faculties and his inability to lead. So they put him forward. They said, we'll worry about leading later. We'll put him in there. So isn't this more on the Democrats and the media who pushed him there, not so much this befuddled, sad man?
Well, he's definitely a befuddled, sad man. But before that, he was an obnoxious blowhard for about 40 years.
That is true. I stand corrected.
Keep in mind. Yeah, I have as much confidence he's going to lead us out of this. He couldn't lead Andrew Cuomo to ladies' night. That's how out of it he is. He's pathetic, and I see that the amount of spin they're trying to put on this, mm-hmm. they are really losing touch with reality, because if they're trying to say, well, we had to get out of Afghanistan eventually. Okay, I think almost everyone agrees with that.
No one disagrees, yeah.
In hindsight, we probably could have gotten out of there in 2006.
Yeah.
Because I really think the only nation building we should do is the nation that's located between Mexico and Canada.
Yes.
We don't need to mess with these other countries.
Right.
But it's a difference between saying you're on a bus and we need to turn around. You apply the brake, you pull over. You don't veer off the road and smash into a brick wall,
right.
and say, but I stopped the bus. Isn't that what you wanted?
Yes.
So what we're seeing, it's not a failure of our troops. It's not even, I hate to say this, I don't even think I can blame the Taliban. They're doing exactly what they've always done. It's the people who are supposed to be in charge of this country. And when Obama was quoted as saying, don't underestimate Joe's ability to F things up, I think we're just seeing the beginning of that.
Yes, to use an old adage, you can't blame the frog for what the scorpion does to the frog.
Yes.
I don't even know what that means.
Sounds French.
I got that off of Cracker Jack. Joe, I don't know what your feelings are towards Donald Trump, good or bad, but I'm asking you to hypothesize, would he have done this?
It's a tough question to answer, but it is weird to hear Joe Biden say, I'm stuck by that May 1st deadline that Trump negotiated to withdraw, but by my calendar, it's late August.
Yes.
So it's also a weird situation to me, because I got fired from telemarketing for being too polite.
Yes.
Yet it seems like the Washington Generals have more success against the Harlem Globetrotters than the generals in Washington have success in anything. But they never seem to lose their job. And it seems like when they create a disaster, and then I turn on a lot of mainstream media, and it's the same people that were involved in creating this disaster that they're like, hey, how should we get out of this disaster? There's no consequences ever.
Yeah, and Biden was part of the disaster for 8 years. And he pretends like he was always against this. And it's not that hard to find tape of him talking about nation building. You just type in Google, but Joe Biden, nation building.
You can even go back a much more recent history to where he said that the Taliban wasn't going to take over and this wouldn't look like Saigon.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Wrong on both counts, Kat. So you hosted a radio program today in which one of your callers was your husband, a veteran who spent time in Afghanistan.
Yes.
Any wisdom to be shared with us?
Yes, wisdom all from him, not me, but it's been really crazy watching him watch all of this for the past few days, starting with before the horrible things that happened yesterday, just seeing troops and Taliban like standing next to each other.
Yeah.
He said when he was there in 2012, Taliban were like ghosts, and the way he put it was, we never saw the whites of their eyes till after we shot them dead.
Right.
And going back to the generals and the leadership, he's saying that, when he was there was sort of the end of the time period where it was really a combat operation. Mm-hmm. So he was wondering if those troops who lost their lives had ever even seen combat before this, if they were not trained properly. Mm-hmm. He said there was basically things like spread out and this and that. And of course, it's not their fault, but all of this, there should have been time for that training. They just let, these guys were sitting ducks, all for the sake of a symbolic deadline for political points.
Yeah, that's all it was, to get it so that Joe had something to say on 9/11 and the 20th anniversary. I love, one thing I say before we go to break, I love how the media is saying you shouldn't be talking about impeachment because that cheapens the whole process. The media that had pushed for 2 impeachments, one based on a phone call. And in this case, anybody talking about impeachment is talking about it based on a rage over the death of Americans. But talking about it in that vein, that just cheapens impeachment. But about that perfect phone call.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.